X-traordinary Brands.
Hello and welcome to Building Extraordinary Brands. This episode is going to be focused entirely on the art of event branding and how to craft unforgettable experiences. I couldn't think of anyone more suitable for this topic than Armin Vit, a veteran in this space. Armin is a renowned graphic designer and writer and the co-founder of UnderConsideration, which is a graphic design firm based in Indiana. He's widely recognized for his work on Brand New, which is one of my favorite sites online. It's the leading blog dedicated to opinions on brand identity redesigns, which attracts over 1.25 million page views a month, which is just crazy. That's amazing. Along with his wife and partner, Armin has authored several influential books and organized numerous design events, including the annual Brand New conference, which has been running since 2010, which I actually attended back then as I was living in New York back then as well. So I'm excited to have Armin here to share his expertise on crafting unforgettable event experiences, especially as I've just gone through this for the first time myself, building the Brand Builders Summit. So we're going to discuss the fundamentals of event branding, how to craft the right experience, including how to engage the audience, plus a few wise lessons learned over the years. So are you excited? Let's dive in. All right, welcome to the show.
As excited as if I was running, as if the conference was today.
Cool, man. Well, let's jump in because that conferences, it's like, as I mentioned, I'm running my first summit now, and it's like there's so much that goes into it. This is like a live one, but yours is in person. I'm curious, like, what inspired you to create the Brand New conference way back in 2010?
Yeah, way back then, it wasn't so much inspiration that drove the creation of it as it was necessity, in that it was a response to the recession of 2008. And we were struggling with getting client work, with getting advertising on Brand New, the blog, which had been running since 2006. And we had gotten quite a big audience on there. And we figured, well, we have this audience, we have this specialty, and we had not always, but since we had our first blog called Speak Up back in 2003, like we wanted to do a conference around design, but, one, we just didn't have the experience. Two, we just didn't know how to compete as a general design conference with other design conferences. And then someone else said, like, oh, if you want to run an event, you need to get insurance for like, $1 million. And like that just scared the hell out of me. I was like, okay, we're not doing that. But then with the focus of Brand New, we just thought, what if we did a conference that was all about logo identity and branding? Nothing else, no editorial design, very little packaging, no general topics. Yeah, and so it was as a way of making money. We just had to figure out a way to make money at the time, and we just thought, maybe we have the audience, we have the topic, let's just figure it out.
Yeah, that's funny you say that because I'm in a similar situation at the moment, and in the past couple of years, my Google search results, which I've relied on for clients and work and everything, has declined just because of algorithm changes. And because of that, yes, and the economic times at the moment, I've had less clients. And this kind of idea came up because I've been a part of a lot of conferences and summits, and people are like, well, where's your summit? And I was like, this may just be the right times. Yeah. And yeah, I've gone gung-ho into it, and it's I'm enjoying the process. There's a lot of work, a lot of things to learn, as you know. But can you remember what it was like when you first, the first event? You're like, $1 million. There's any other like big surprises that came up?
Yeah, I think that was one of the first things that we tackled, like the insurance. And it's not that you need to pay $1 million of insurance, it's that you have to have coverage worth $1 million. Like the umbrella coverage that you get from insurance company is that, and it turns out that it's literally just like $600. And it's just like, it's not that hard.
Someone tried to scare you out of it.
Yeah, well, I think just like the way they worded it and the way that I perceived it, like, oh, that sounds scary. That sounds like a lot of money to be responsible for in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, that was one of the first things because most venues will ask for a certificate of insurance. So you're like, okay, how do I prove that I have said insurance? And then it's just like a Google search. A lot of what we've done and figured out over the years is just Google searching what is the answer to this problem that we have, or how. And any term that we heard at the beginning is like, okay, what I think we're supposed to know what that means, but we literally
Yep.
have no idea. So we're going to Google that so that we don't sound completely
Can you
dumb
remember
moving
anything? Like
forward.
any examples?
The one I think and I still don't know what it's called, but the day before the first conference, the like the venue team, they were like, hey, do you want one of these like communication devices to communicate with the other people, front of the house, back of the house? Again, I still don't know what it's called because we don't use them. But they're like, do you want one of this? And like, what does it do? Well, it allows you to communicate with all of us at the same time by pushing this button. I was like, okay, sure, I'll take one of those. And then I just put it next to my seat the whole day. The first conference, it just sat there. I had no idea what to do with it. And so that was one of those things which is like, okay, it sounds like a thing that I should be using, but we're not using it. We're just like screaming to the back of to backstage, like, hey, turn up the volume, or to the guy in the audio booth, like, turn up the volume. So we just figured that just made it a little bit more personable, in the sense that, hey, this is not a perfect situation that's going to run flawlessly all 12 hours, but that we're all humans back here trying to make this thing happen as smoothly as possible.
Yeah, there's so many moving pieces, and you really don't. You truly underestimate it the first time. At least I am. There's just so much. The fun part as designers is like branding the event and like the visual sides of it and so forth. But like if you get into the weeds, it's just a lot of logistics, right? Just like organizing people and things. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, what's the balance between like, the branding and then like the organizing? How do you balance that?
Yeah, I think organizing is key, and the branding, I would say, is 25% of the success of the event, and also 25% of the amount of not brain power, but the amount of energy it requires. The rest is just really handling vendors, handling, speaker communications, being very clear about who gets what, who needs to be where, when. And yeah, just there's so many moving pieces that, for us, it's as important to have a good logo as it is to have a really good spreadsheet with who's involved, who needs to deliver what, when, who hasn't replied to something. So yeah, organization becomes such an important part of the event, that the branding is the easy part. Like that's
Yeah.
the fun part. And that's just, whether you have that or not, you can still have a good event. And, like, I don't mean to belittle what we do, because we do brand our conference
Yeah,
in,
I was
funky.
gonna mention that. So
Yeah.
just so our listeners know, like Armin, every year he refreshes the identity for the brand and it goes like all in on it, and it's always like a huge sting. So it's like when you say 25%, like, I'm amazed by that, because like you spend so much time and effort like creating everything like from scratch.
Yeah, and it's because I think that, and we can get more into details about that, but I think that's just a bonus. I think what people react to the most is a well-run event, like
Yeah.
things that run on time, things, if you tell them that something is going to happen, that thing happens. And also with speakers and sponsors, just like establishing expectations, managing expectations, and then delivering on those expectations. Like that's, to us, the most important thing, or if not the most important thing, the one that will make sure that people keep coming back.
Yeah.
Like the identity stuff is just like it's the icing on the cake, that it's different, that it's unique, that it's memorable, and that it keeps us entertained for long periods of time in the
Yes.
lead up to the conference.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about that then. We'll talk about what makes a like an unforgettable experience in your opinion. Like that's the thing that people remember and that they're going to stay engaged with. Like, how do you make it unforgettable?
Yeah, I think I was thinking about this question that you sent, or when you sent it, just like the trick is transporting people into a small little universe for 1 day, 2 days, where everything is branded a certain way. The speakers reflect kind of like the interests of the attendees. So it's really just about an immersion into this moment where you can forget about work, you can forget about, other troubles that you may have, and just enter this place where everything is connected in one way or another, whether it's visually, whether it's thematically, and it's all just about delivering on that in as many areas of the event as possible, whether it's that email communications, the program, the tote bag, the speakers, the stage design. Like even for ourselves, even for me and Bryony, my wife and business partner, it even comes down to what we choose to wear on the 2 days of the event. Like, we're dorks and we just buy, color coordinated clothes with the identity, and we'll find little ways to customize things that we buy off the rack to the conference. So it's really just about that moment. It's like, for 2 days, like, come along with us on this journey. And I think that's what people can respond to, where when they're just like, where everything is considered and well thought out, and nothing is random. Not everything is going to be perfect, but all the choices sort of reflect what you're going to experience for those 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever it may be.
Well, yeah, and it sounds like what you're coming back to is the brand. It's like the experience and also the brand, and like that whole world that you're creating is part of the the identity of the conference. So let's dive into that a bit. Like, what do you think makes a good event well, good branding in terms of like the visual identity and how it all mixes together? Like, what are the key components?
Well, I think it can vary. You can have something as simple as TED, the TED branding. It's just the red logo. Not everything is nicely produced, and that's it. And it's just like, that's what you expect, just like sophistication, uh, uh, you know, uh, things that look good, things that look high end, and that's it. Like, that's the extent of the brand, and then that gets reflected in the types of speakers that come there. In our case, it's more about, since we go to different cities, it really is about not honoring, but just if we're gonna go to Chicago, we want you to feel like you're in Chicago. Like, when you're in in that conference, we don't want the experience to feel like you could be in Austin or Salt Lake City, where we're going to be next. It really is about finding something that is topical, that is timely, that is relevant to where we are. Because again, it's all about where you're going, and kind of like appreciating that people are taking the time out of their work and life to come to this experience, when you can just tie it into the fabric of where they're going to be. For us, that's what makes it exciting or interesting. And yeah, and then it's just a matter of like the basic principles of branding. Like, how do you unify the visual experience across all the various touch points that are part of the event? And then I think that's just a matter of kind of like the basic premise of what we do as designers, which is just deploying a system cohesively but not boringly.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And just for our listeners, it may be interesting because you say that you transform them, well, you take them away to another universe, right? And through the branding, but you also keep it relevant to the location and the scenario, like the context. So what comes to mind for me was that Chicago one you mentioned, like the pizzas, so Chicago pizza, right? The whole event branding was focused around pizza, and that was a unique idea, but it was relevant to the place. And I've been to Chicago once or twice, and what I remember is the deep dish pizza. So that's like the one thing, and the bean and all of that. So I think it was a strong symbol to go with. So yeah.
Yeah, so, and for example, with Chicago, where we've done the conference there 3 times, every year we try to find a different aspect of the city. Like in 2017, as you mentioned, the bean, like that's what inspired that year's identity, where we had a lot of reflective materials that distorted the reflection around it, like the bean does. So yeah, it's all about finding those, whether they're very specific references to the city or things that you instantly associate with the city, like in this case, Chicago pizza is sort of an obvious tie-in. And what's interesting, and not to get too nerdy, is that your first impression of association of Chicago and pizza, it's deep dish pizza, but that's actually not what locals think of Chicago pizza as Chicago pizza. So once you get into those details, it's kind of like what you're trying to do with branding for clients. You're trying to find the thing that's specific to them, that's unique to them, that you can tell a bigger story through something that's relevant to them. So yeah, we just get it's really interesting to try to find what specific things that will be relevant to where we're going.
Yeah, it's funny about that. You say you have to ask the locals, and it's so true. I recently worked on rebranding the logo for San Francisco, and part of my first round, I had some logos that had San Fran as the name, and that's a big no to locals. Like, do not call it San Fran. So like in Sydney, we may say that. So that was kind of like a learning to me. So I guess that leads into like the first steps of branding, like trying to understand the context, like the location, and you're doing your research. So I'd be curious to like your first steps when you're creating an event. I know you've done a few different ones, not just brand new. Like what first steps do you take?
I think the first step is figuring out what the mood of the event is. So as you mentioned, it's not just a brand new conference. We also do first round, which is where designers will show the first round of design explorations that they show to the client. So they'll take out of the archives the original first round PDF, Keynote, Figma, whatever it is, and show it to our audience as it was. So that's a little bit more of a kind of like utilitarian, not hands-on, but just more know-how and more straightforward informational conference. So that one, the design for that one is very straightforward, just like a slab serif for the logo and the headline typography, things like that, 2 colors, that's it. It never changes. It's just like consistent, because like we've done that conference 15 times and it's always the same format, always the same brief to the speakers. That one is just kind of like, no bells, no whistles, that's it. With the brand new conference, at some point we decided, well, not at some point, from the beginning, we're like, this is a branding conference for branding designers. It has to be fun, cool, experimental, different. It has to reflect the industry. So, that's always a
I don't envy you there. Like designing for designers, it's a challenge one, especially the brutal lot that hanging out in brand new.
Especially when, for a living, I critique other people's works. The bar is high, and then I just put spikes around that bar, and it's like I have to jump that myself. Like it's just like I built this booby trap on my own. But yeah, then every year, just to get into how we decide what we're going to do, it's really just thinking about it. And that sounds like a dumb answer. Like, yeah, of course you're going to think about it. But like, we don't have a set process. We don't have a brainstorming session. We don't have a proprietary discovery phase or anything. We're just like, Brian and I will be sitting for dinner. Like we might be eating pizza, be like, hey, what about pizza for Chicago? And then it's just like a give and take of, okay, fine, it's pizza, but how do you make it unique? How do you make it interesting? Like for the New York conference in 2018, when we did a bunch of concrete, the idea for that one came on the flight back from the conference. Tiny just said like, hey, next year I want to use concrete. Just like that was her goal. And like, hey, that's perfect. New York is the concrete jungle. No one calls it the concrete jungle in New York, but it's a cliche. So it's a cliche, but how do we turn it on its head? So we're always trying to find something, a specific aspect, and then how do we add to it? How do we give it a new spin? How do we flip it on its head? And that's usually our process. So like find the one thing and then just make it our own, whether it's through design or through the process or through the materials, in a way that is unexpected for most of the audience, where they go like, you know, how did they arrive at something like this? And in the end, it comes down to just like being very open and very loose about what is right or wrong. It's just like, well, let's try this and see if if it works out. But then always keeping in mind that that the audience are designers. So we have to deliver a certain level of design.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the fact that you find a big idea. It's often, I don't want to say cliche, but it's like what you think of. Like when you go to a certain location, it's often location themed, and but you do innovate on that idea. And what I really enjoy is like the process and behind the scenes behind each event, because you can see exactly how you came to that idea, all the effort that you've gone into it. It improves the story. Like it brings you into the story, and that's what makes a more memorable event, in my opinion, is because you feel like you're part of it, because the story is being shared.
Yeah, and for our listeners who are familiar with, or for your listeners who are familiar with the brand new conference materials, is that we do a lot of hand assembly and a lot of manual labor. And when you think the lanyards that people wear is usually plastic pouches with a print inside of it. We'll go out and in Nashville we did vinyl records. We cut them down, we printed on them. For last year with the pizza, we cut up pizza boxes and made stacks of those. Concrete, we cast it in concrete. It's a lot of time consuming work, and I think it was in 2015 that we started really documenting our process. Like now we have two or three recordings going on from different angles, capturing everything that we do, photographing everything, just because it humanizes the process. And when it, like, part of our brand of the brand new conference is that feeling that it's a human endeavor, and that we're not a big team, we're not a corporation. It's just two people that enjoy hard manual labor, have the patience to get on with it for long periods of time, and then we share this, and people are like, oh, that's crazy, they did all that just for us, for our amusement, for our enjoyment. And like, we do it for our enjoyment as well, but I think it's that connection. How do we connect with people in a way that is different from other conferences? With other conferences, you go and there's like a team of 20 people in charge, and that's great. Like sometimes I envy having a team of 20 people running an event. With ours, it's just me and Bryony. She runs the front of the house, I run the back of the house. I'm working with a team backstage, she's working with a team with the ushers and cleaning crew and all that stuff. So, and people see us running around, so that's part of the appeal. That's what we're trying to create, that says that, hey, we're all in this together. We're not just farming this out. You are experiencing pain and stress and emotions in real time from these two people.
I feel you, Armin. Like I wish I could delegate more. I just have so much control, and especially the first time going through it, you want to learn all the steps, so then like maybe you can delegate in the future. But there's so much going on. So I'm curious, like, you run brand new and you write a lot, like every day. How much time are you spending on a conference of this size, like putting it all together and the logistics and the branding, versus like your other, client work and then brand new? Like, you do a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one thing to note is that we don't do client work anymore. I think, after the pandemic, we decided that we just couldn't do it anymore and keep running brand new, the blog, especially as a subscription service. Now that people are paying for it, like, it demands a little bit more time investment than we did before. Like before, like, hey, it's free, whatever. But now that people are paying for it, like, there's we have a bigger responsibility to the audience. So that started taking more time. And the conference is a year-round effort to varying degrees of time requirement over the year. So like at the beginning, like the moment the one conference ends, like it's Thursday and Friday, on Saturday, Brian and I are already figuring out what can we improve, what can we do better. because a part of it is because you're riding the high. You're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
this was amazing. People loved it. All right, so what can we do now? What can we do next? And then like January, we start selecting speakers. February and March, we start designing the website. And in between conferences, we're also figuring out processes, like manual processes that we can use for that year. So we do have some like official time for R&D. Like we'll buy different machines. We bought embroidery. We bought a tufting. We have a sales screen thing. So we're always trying different aspects that happens before we launch each year's website, so that we sort of have an idea of what the materials are going to be like, so that informs the design. Then we announce the speakers. There's a little bit of a lull. And right now it's June. So from here until October, it's just like 100% time focus on the conference and 25% extra focusing on brand new.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, it's just, I would love to say that we have a really balanced work-life balance, but it's a lot of work from here. Like June, July, and August is just a lot of work.
Yeah. Wow.
But it's in the end, it comes down to time management, and then just and then we learn to be really efficient and try to optimize our process as much as we can, whether it's for the conference or for things like brand new or podcasts that follow up. Like, how can we make a good quality product as efficiently as possible?
Yeah. Yeah. And it must have been, after 2010, the first time, the next year, was it just a success and you just wanted to redo it? Or was it the case of like, you still needed to, make up for lost client work, or like, how did that story happen?
So the first year, it went really well in every way possible. Like the audience loved it, speakers loved it, the few sponsors that we had loved it. We enjoyed it. We made money. We made a profit. We're like, okay, this is good. And we had like almost 500 people that first year in New York, and they were like, all right, now let's go to the other side of the U.S. And we did the conference in San Francisco the second year, and 300 people showed up. They were like, oh, like that wasn't supposed to happen.
Okay.
We should have had another 500 people. So I think at that point we could have been like, well, like we had a lucky first time, and then that's it. So, but when we saw the potential, and it was really about, okay, so it didn't work going to San Francisco. Why didn't it work? What did we struggle with? And then we went back to New York, same venue for two more years. 12, 13. And that was still a one-day conference. And then we realized that the biggest effort comes in setting up the conference, the build up to the conference, the day before the conference, and then running the conference. So in 2014, we thought, well, what if we did 2 days, and then more people might come because it's more worth the travel expense of like, if I'm going to take time out of work, might as well make it be 2 days. So in 2014, that's when we did the first 2-day conference, and we grew to 700 people. I'm like, okay, and the effort was sort of the same. Like showing up the second day and running the event was almost relaxing. Which is like, okay, we ironed out the kinks. Now we just show up and repeat everything that was set up for the first day. And then we just kept building from there, and we did New York again. Like we always felt safe in New York. I think there's just like such a big audience that it was like, if no one wants to travel, at least we'll get all the New Yorkers. And then 2016, we went to Nashville, and we got up to 1,000 people. We're like, okay, cool. Like now people are traveling to the conference because Nashville is not that big. So from that moment on, like that gave us the confidence, right? We can go not wherever we want, but wherever it makes sense. People will come. We figured out that our sweet spot is 1,000 people. Beyond that, we cannot produce that much, that amount of material. Hand assembly is just a lot. Like if we want to grow to 2,000 people, we just wouldn't be able to maintain that human touch. So year after year, it's just like figuring out what worked, what didn't work, how can we improve.
Yeah. So did you get feedback or help along the way? Like, Are there any insights or lessons learned that you could share for anyone crafting their own event?
I mean, it's the thing is that each year presents different problems, and I think what we've learned the most is to ask more questions up front. Like, leave nothing up in the air. Like, if you assume that someone else is going to do something because you assume that's their job, don't assume that.
Mm-hmm.
Put it in writing, specify that whatever needs to be done, it has to be done. Like, specify everything. So I think over the years, what we've refined is like the questions we will ask a venue, the requirements that we will be looking for in a venue. And then, when we work with AV companies for rental gear, just like, specify exactly what model we want, how many cables we need, or be very specific about uh, the requirements of the venue. Say like, hey, your camera can only be positioned 100 meters from here, so bring enough cables, because we've been in other situations where the camera is 100 feet behind and there's not enough cables, so you struggle. So it's really just about kind of like keeping this checklist of things that can go wrong and just preemptively trying to make them go right. And every now and then we'll ask a question and people are like, oh, that doesn't apply here. Like, okay, fine, move on to the next question.
Okay. So you're getting things in writing, making sure everyone has a plan and knows what they're doing to make things run smoothly.
Yeah, and then it's like keeping, especially with the venue and making sure that the venue understands what's going to happen, because a lot of times what happens is that you're dealing with someone on the sales side of the venue, and then on the day of the event 10 new people show up who are the head carpenter, the stagehands, the technical director, or, well, if not the technical director, the one that's going to be actually turning on the lights and the computers and stuff like that. So putting everything in writing, so because those people are used to coming into a show and being handed instructions, and they'll execute. So we didn't know that at the beginning. So every time we would have to like explain everything. We were like, hey, we told you this already. Like, no, you told someone else. No one told us. So yeah, a lot of it is just putting as much as you can in writing up front, if not so much for the benefit of the venue and the staff, but for your benefit, so that you know what you have going on. And every now and then we still mess up. Like, we did the first round in LA a couple of months ago, and the screen was small, the projector was not powerful enough, but we didn't find that out until the day of the event. I mean, we saw the screen size, like, that small, but the lighting when we're setting up, it wasn't quite right. And then we just assumed, well, when the lights go down, it will be fine. And then it wasn't fine. So, the next event in New York, we're like, turn the lights off. Let's just figure out. We prepared a special deck that runs through all the possible screen options, like light background, dark background, motion, big sound, little sound, tiny type, big type, red, blue, and then we just went through them and analyzed what was going on. So yeah, we're still learning, because like every now and then things go well, and then you stop thinking this could go wrong until it goes wrong.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. Like, it's some of those things you pick up on the job, right? And
Yeah.
it happens. Like, my dad's a magician, a comedy magician, and I see his like pieces of paper that show like where the seats are and the lights are and all the things going on. And he is so particular that he won't take on a job that can't accommodate it, because it will ruin the experience. So you have to have those parameters of like, okay, well, the audience has to be this close, because otherwise it's going to ruin the experience. They can't see what's going on. So you have to keep those things in mind to make sure that the event goes smoothly.
Yeah, for sure.
So talking about events, like, you've created a lot, but do you have any that come to mind that are like are super memorable that you've attended as someone else's event?
It sounds horrible, but like few events come close to our overall experience. And like, again, like, that sounds horrible and like I'm full of myself. But no, I think the one that does come to mind that I really enjoyed was Laugh Fest in Lima, Peru. that Pictures Mesa runs. And it's a lovely, the venue is like this old school theater in downtown Lima. They do a really good job with the identity. They always have the little lightning bolt logo that they figure out how to, or they've found ways to reimagine it every year. Not reimagine it, but reuse it in different ways. People are lovely. And then one thing that I remember as a speaker on day one or day two, I can't remember. I think it was just like a one-day conference. Can't remember. But backstage, they had the cook that has been cooking for his family and his parents. So we had a homemade meal backstage with all the speakers. So that was kind of just a lovely experience of, again, someone looking out for the speakers and kind of being authentic to who they are. So yeah, that's one that stands out.
So the food was the key point that came to mind for you.
Yeah, it wasn't so much the food. I mean, it was delicious, but it was more the fact that, so it wasn't like catered. It was like
Okay.
they didn't buy the food of a restaurant.
okay.
It was just like it was because it's also that he runs the conference himself, so it's a way of bringing in his his life into the rest of our lives of the speakers, and sharing that, which I thought like I'm still talking about it, so it was definitely memorable.
I think that's a really interesting point. Like the fact that you're saying you bring in your life and your experience into the event. Like everyone's going to have a different experience. Like yourself, you come from the identity background and you're reviewing, and like you bring that side of things into the event, and like that's why you created a unique event focused on identity, and then first round as well. Like this is your experience. So I'm in a similar vein. I love strategy. I love design and marketing and growth. I'm like, well, I'm just going to make a summit on those things that I love. And that's what I'm doing. So it's like, I think that's a really key point. It's like, well, what are your passions? Like how can you bring your experience into this event and make it really special, like based on your expertise?
Yeah, 100%. I think what it comes down for us at the end, part of the driving thinking is like, in terms of the speakers that we invite, the venues that we go to, the design that we do for it, like what would we as designers want to experience? Who do we want to see speak? It's a joy to get to curate the people that you want to see speak, the people whose work you admire. Like, hey, this is my dream team of 16, 20 people whose thoughts I want to see more, I want to hear more of on how they approach design. So I think that's what makes unique events. People who put their passion behind it and whose own curiosity and ability to curate and ability to kind of provide that experience, that's what makes it memorable. So I think, I don't know if you're familiar with Tina Roth Eisenberg, who started Creative Mornings.
Yeah.
It's just, I think it's a great reflection of her personality. She likes people. She likes to bring people together, explore completely different topics. So her event is completely different from our event because she's a different person than we are. Her interests are different. Her personality is different. So I think when you lean into what you're interested in and have a sense of what may or may not appeal to a broader group of people within those same possible parameters, I think that's when you strike gold, when you're able to sort of not commercialize, but when you're able to expand on your passions to other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And the key word that you said there was curation, which we hadn't even touched on, like, which is such a huge part of an event. It's like, who are the people that you're going to invite and what value you're going to bring? Are they going to deliver? So it's a vital part of the experience is curation. You also mentioned commercialization, and I was curious around sponsors, which is, they can really help support the event, like cover your overheads, and it's a win-win for everyone. So I'm curious to your approach with sponsors. Like, how do you get them? Like, where do you find them? Do you approach them? Like, what's your process there?
It is the most painful aspect of running a conference, just going out and asking for money. And then the sponsors that you approach, they want more than just their logo on things. They want to speak, they want a booth, they want a lot of things in return for money, which is understandable. They want to connect with the audience as much as possible. at the beginning, we just had a few sponsors, there's some connections that we had. Then we started, then some other sponsors came in where they saw the pictures. They were like, hey, this sounds interesting. What do you have to offer? So you have to put together a sponsorship package and show the prices and what they get in return. So yeah, like for a long time, we were perfecting that sponsorship package so that it was convincing and enticing and it had the right information. But it was very difficult to get new sponsors, especially in the past 4 years. It just became really, really hard. So for, I think, the past 4 or 5 years, a pandemic notwithstanding, we had basically the same sponsors, maybe one or two new that wouldn't come back the next year. They were like, "Yeah, it's fine." And now we're not doing sponsors anymore. Like
Okay.
we this year there's no sponsors. Like it's literally, $50,000 to $70,000 that we're leaving on the table. Like we were done. Like we were done with the requests. We were done with the sort of hand holding necessary. Which is fine. Like it almost becomes like a service aspect of the conference, and we just didn't enjoy it. We're extremely grateful for all the support that we got from all the sponsors over the years, but then we just wanted, like what me and Bryony value the most is independence. Like in everything that we do, we just want to be as independent as possible and do things our way and not have kind of like outside forces, quote unquote, influence the experience of the event. And so one of the reasons why we wanted to kind of like forego sponsors was so that the experience in the lobby matched the experience inside the auditorium. Like inside, it was all about branding, all the speakers, the curation, and outside, it was just like swag and samples and, getting pitched from the sponsors, which again is fine, it's understandable. But we just didn't want to have that, not conflict, but it was just like different experiences. Yeah, so
Mm,
now we're on the hook for coming up with fun ways to activate the lobby. And
yep.
we have a few ideas, and we're trying to come up with things that we can replicate year over year and make the experience fun for the attendees.
That's brilliant. I love those insights, and thanks for sharing that. And it's great that you're in a position now to, cut out sponsorship, even though it's like it does have its downfalls as well.
Yeah, it's a financial loss in a way, but at the same time, it's empowering, and it's not that we need that boost for our ego. It's more like, hey, we can do this ourselves. We rely on people coming, on people streaming the conference, and that's great. That's enough. Yes, it would be great to get those extra $50,000, $70,000, whatever it is. But luckily, we don't need them. Again, it's just the two of us, so we don't have big overhead. We keep our expenses for the conference super tight. Like it's not that we're cheap. We're just like very mindful of where we spend money. So yeah, it's being in a position over time that allowed us to make that
Yeah.
decision.
Yeah. I just wanted to go back to the curation aspect. I had another question. Like, how do you actually go about curating your speakers? I know you mentioned like it's people's work you admire and you know them, but like, is there any other like granular way that you go through like curating?
Yeah, well, what I do is that, all year long, I keep a folder on my desktop. And whenever I see a project that I like and brand new, I'll just drag whoever designed it. I'll just put it in that folder. If I run it in a LinkedIn invitation from someone that looks interesting, I'll just drag it. Whether it doesn't matter where they are, what their work is. If something catches my attention, I'll just drag it. And then as we're starting to come up with an actual list, then we have some buckets that we need to fill. So it's like the big design firm, the popular design firm, whether it's big or small. Now not as much, but in earlier conferences, like who is the kind of like a grandfather of design that can come present. So that led to a lot of old white men. So that has its own issues. But now there's not as many of them around anymore, so that sort of that problem sort of sorted itself out.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just trying to fill as many pockets as possible without trying to please everyone. Like we're still very niche about the type of work, the focus on identity and branding. But then, we have someone that designs more packaging, someone that designs more type-driven work, someone that is more corporate, someone that is small, someone that is big. And now, the past 3 conferences, it's all about diversity. Like, that has become our number one priority. So, now we sort of see what does the whole picture look like. If you look at all the speakers, what does that look like? And we just want it to look like a candy shop of sizes, colors, flavors, just like because I think when we first did that in Austin, the reaction from the audience was just amazing. It's just like people could feel the energy, people appreciated the different stories, because for a long time conferences were all about the success, bringing in the successful designers that got all the jobs, that got all the awards, and that story gets tiring and it gets repetitive, and you don't see how someone's experience in life has informed their design. So for us, we're looking at different backgrounds, like almost to a degree where the work is secondary, like the quality of the work. And that doesn't mean that the people that we've invited, their work sucks. But that used to be that for us, it was all about the work at first. Like, it doesn't matter who you are, as long as the work is good. But then what that led to, just a lot of white men. And, that just became, because that's what, the industry, the world has sort of propped up. Yeah, at some point, we're just like, we cannot. Well, at some point in 2018, we had a conference. The branding conference was all white people. And people called us out on it. And we're like, okay, we got it. Our bad. Never going to happen again. So yeah, it's all about finding that balance of what's right, what's entertaining, what's interesting, what's valuable to the audience, and yeah, just kind of like reflecting the industry as best as possible, and in a way that's as interesting as possible. Also, the one other thing that I'll say is, like, some of the speakers that we invite, we have no idea if they're good speakers or not. Like, they've never spoken. Yeah, and we trust them. We're like, hey, whether it's because their Instagram profile looks interesting, their portfolio looks well put together, their bio is well written, we're just like, hey, this person, they might bomb or they might not, but at least they'll have an interesting story to tell and an intriguing point of view. So yeah, we take a lot of chances based on hunches. And luckily, a lot of them have paid off. And the last thing I'll say, because I realize this answer is long, we almost never take pitches. Like, if you pitch us to speak, I think we've done maybe 4% of pitches. We've invited those people. And it's because the people that are pitching are usually the ones that have a PR person, they have the time, the money to be able to spend time on the road. And again, like, that creates a certain type of speaker that it just doesn't work for us as well.
Yeah. Now, that's like valuable insights. So thank you for sharing that. And I relate on the diversity aspect as well. We have about 30 speakers, and to get people of color from all different backgrounds in like the 4 different tracks has been challenging, but it's always been on my mind as well. We're getting there, but the pool is lower, so it can be really challenging. And you quite possibly have the largest pool of like identity specialists in the world based on brand new, and even you're struggling as well, but you have a big focus.
Yeah, for sure, it's a big struggle. And like, you think like, okay, we have more connections, but even like, I have to ask my connections for more connections, specifically of people, minorities, people that we might not be aware of, because like, you have to do the work. Like, you can't just like think, oh, they have to self-promote in order for us to find them. Like, no, if you want it and you want to find like people like that are different enough, like, you have to do the work. And like, nowadays, at the beginning, I used to be really kind of like very self-conscious, like, about, hey, I'm trying to find people that are not white, that not white. Like, now I say, like, hey, we're looking for BIPOC of color, different gender orientations, just like straight up ask, because I think the more we request, the more that we demand that audience, the more they'll come out. And I think they're come out. That's a bad pun in this case, but yeah, I think, and it's becoming a little bit easier, which is great. Like I think you go like going on LinkedIn. It used to be a lot of just the same crowd, and that the amount of different people that I found on LinkedIn is just amazing. So I think there's more to draw from nowadays. And part of it is just like social norms have been changing, and just like, change has come from within. Just like, the society as a whole demanded more representation, and now here it is. So it's now it's our job to celebrate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, good on you for changing up after the wake-up call in 2018. So
yeah,
we'll take a little pivot here. I have two more focuses here. One is about engaging the audience, and then maybe the last one's like measuring success, and then we can wrap up. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious around like, how do you actually engage the audience once they're there? Like, are there any strategies that you use throughout the event?
I don't have anything insightful or maybe too applicable to other conferences, but it really comes down to just establishing that, hey, I'm in this. Like, this is my thing. I want it to succeed. I want you to have a good time. And like, we're there for people's enjoyment. And I think everything we say in our introduction, how we interact with every time when a speaker ends, we'll come up and do a question. We'll try to make jokes, not bad jokes, but just kind of like, take off the degree of seriousness of most conferences. Like, hey, we're just we're all humans. We want to have a good time. We want to be entertained. We want to be informed. So for us, it's just a matter of creating that personal connection that, hey, we're here for you. You're here for the whole experience. So let's just try to have a good time. And then it comes down to little details like the music that's playing. For many years we had our good friend Mark Kingsley curate the music between breaks, so that just creates a certain mood, a certain ambience. And again, in our case, like when we do the first half hour of the conference, we share how we did the process. So that creates an instant connection of people holding the program, the tote bag. They're like, crap, these people, like, there's literally sweat from these two people in this thing that I'm holding. So yeah, that just creates a connection. And like, we don't, like, one thing that we do is that we don't allow our speakers to go into the green room. Like, we don't even tell them that there's a green room. We want you out there with the audience. Like, don't escape. Like, it's just like, so it's creating, again, this sense of accessibility that, you're there to be with other people, not to idolize, these people that are untouchable.
Yeah. You're talking about all the senses there, like the mood, the lighting, the music, the connection with others. I think there's a lot of things going on there. So thank you for sharing. Mm-hmm. I guess the last thing is like, how do you measure the success of an event?
We don't have any, again, because we're small and we're just designers. We have no way of tracking success other than ticket sales and registrations for the webcast. So that's an obvious thing, right? So how much money did we spend? How much money came in? That's one measure of success. Our biggest measure of success is during the after party, which happens at the night of the second day. If 100 people come up to us and say, this was awesome, you guys are crazy, that's it. That's all we need. Like, the moment we go to an after party and people leave us alone and no one approaches us and tries to avoid us, that's when we know we've failed.
Has that happened?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. So and that's what we are sweating out in our backyard doing work, or in our workshop, like our fingers are hurting. Like, why are we doing this? And we're like, remember, you're doing this for the after party, for that moment where everybody in the audience, like, this was awesome. Thank you for doing it. You guys are crazy. Like, that's our biggest measure of success. So, like, the audience's reaction and emotion, and kind of like appreciation and thankfulness that it's happening. Not that we necessarily did it as the two people behind it, but that it exists, that it brings them joy in some way. So for us, that's just that's just the icing of the cake. And then obviously the kind of like when we show the case study of the conference and people were like, this is amazing, whether it's on Behance or on our website, like that's also a measure of success, and it gives us the confidence and kind of like it fuels us to keep going and to keep getting crazier and try to outdo ourselves and just trying to like not repeat ourselves. That's also kind of like that for us. That's a measure of success, like not relying on a formula that we can replicate over and over again, which is like, how do we make this better? How do we improve? And how do we, for people that come back, how do we make it a different experience?
Yeah. And that's, you've hit on a few things there, like the joy aspect I really picked up on, like the fact that people are having a great experience and they're having joy. Like that's awesome. That's awesome. And like the fact that they're appreciating, reacting, you're connected, like that's some really good feedback on like what makes a good event. And with other people I've spoken to about running events, they say the same thing about the formula. Like you can't just repeat it every year. You have to have something new, some new element to it. Otherwise it becomes boring if you keep doing it. And these are from like, conference veterans like yourself. It's like, how do you refresh it? How do you make it new? How do you make it, crazier, I guess, is your approach.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, on that topic, you have the brand new conference coming up in October, I believe. Do you want to share a little bit about that for our audience?
Yeah, so October 10 and 11, we're doing it in Salt Lake City. It will be our 13th conference. Right now, we're literally in the thick of it, putting together the materials. We've done a lot of testing, and now we have to just figure out how to expand that to 1,000 or 1,100 specimens of each thing. And yeah, we have a great lineup from, people all over the world. We're very excited about a few internationals like, and associates from Vietnam, Studio Dumber from the Netherlands. Yeah, so we're always excited for the speakers, and it's coming up very soon. Lots of seats available, webcast, live webcast if you or can't travel.
Okay, so they can get that at brand new, right?
bnconf.com. That will take you to the brand new conference.
All right, amazing, thank you. Anywhere people can connect with you, or they can learn more information about your work and connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, I have an Instagram account that I rarely post to. We also have a business account called UC LLC for UnderConsideration, which also is not very active. As you can tell, we're not very good on social media. That's like our one sort of Achilles heel. But then brand new by UC LLC, that's where you get the most activity. That's where we post all of our news, things like that. If you like reading about logo redesigns or new designs of logos and identities, brand new all the way, every day, except weekends.
All right. Armin, thank you so much. Everything you do for the industry for so many years. It's been a pleasure knowing you for that long, and having a chat for I think the second time on a podcast. So appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right. That's it. Thank you, Armin.
You're welcome.
Building extraordinary brands.